Let me know when you're ready.
Okay, take two.
All right. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming out tonight for our very first Meet Your Local Author event, first of what I hope will be several. My name is Louise Savella. I work here at the Black Road branch at the library. I'm a librarian, the adult services manager here at this branch, assistant manager, I should say, adult services assistant manager. And one of my hats that I wear is taking care of the local author collection at both buildings. And we're so grateful for our partnership with WriteOn and the authors that helped us grow that local author collection. I can show you where it is at this building later on if you'd like. It's a really nice collection from quite a few different authors. I'd say there are at least 20, 25 different authors that are represented.
Yes, and the man over there is represented. He belongs to WriteOn.
Yeah.
And the gentleman with the camera was one of our was at the very first meeting.
Awesome.
So, yep.
Awesome. So I'm really excited to, like I said, tonight's our first Meet the Author Rep. We've got Tom Hernandez and Denise Baran-Unland to talk about their books, and we'll do some Q&A, and hopefully you have some questions too. And so thank you, Tom and Denise, for being here today. One of the partnership with the WriteOn group and the library has kind of evolved over time. And so maybe, Tom, you can talk about how WriteOn got started. And
actually, I came into it a few months after they started. Denise co-founded the group with another lady who kind of faded away when motherhood kind of took over. A very sweet lady named Christina Skaggs, but you can take it from there.
Oh, okay. Well, I would also have to say that I was a very reluctant co-founder, so I'll just give a little bit of credit to Christina Skaggs. We had belonged to another writers group that was also fading away. She wanted a group that had more critiquing. She asked if I would start the group with her. And I told her no, but I would help her if she wanted to start a group. And she was very persistent, as I think writers can sometimes be. So finally I said yes, but I will just help you a little bit from behind the scenes. So we actually started off at the Three Rivers Arts Council in Minooka. The group was renting the firehouse at the time, was looking for programs. So, and that's where Tom actually had come into the meeting as well. And what he's saying is absolutely correct. Christina, she, got married and started getting children, and she was trying to come to the meetings with the baby, and she was, just struggling with that. So then Tom gradually stepped up. She stepped back, and she's gone back to school. She's a nurse, and so, but who would have thought we would have had such a group? And where did I eventually say yes? I was doing a writer's kind of like a $5, and I'll give you a 15-minute assessment at the old Harwood Post. So that tells you how long ago this was. And Christina walked around to everybody who showed up. So it's basically, give me $5, which I donated to Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I'll give you 15 minutes to just give you some feedback. But we had a nice attendance, and people were really hungry to get that feedback on their writing. Is this good? Is this interesting? Am I doing it right? What should I do? And she walked around with a little clipboard saying, would you be interested in group? Would you be interested in group? And she came up with a clipboard, and she said, so these people want a group. And so that's how we got started. And Tom can tell you how we've grown, through the years. I mean, we moved from the firehouse here, I think, in about 2013.
I believe that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
And we went from half a dozen very committed souls to at different times 20, 25 people meeting here. We have more room, and that's kind of key. The idea that we're partnering with the library, which clearly is in our best interest. We're surrounded by books. What a great idea! But also we're here to promote the library, which, contrary to all the crap and nonsense that you hear from some people in the world, libraries are still critical and essential to communities, and have evolved in ways that probably nobody could have thought of, but I mean are essential components of what we think of as community. So this benefits the two of us to promote them to promote us, to support us. And so it's been our pleasure to kind of make the Black Road branch our home over these last few years. And so yeah, our membership kind of ebbs and flows with seasons and so forth, but routinely we can count on 12, 15 people. And of course over this last year and a half it's been on Zoom, which I hate Zoom. but it's better to do that than to do nothing at all. We did try a couple of hybrid meetings where we had some people in the room here, and we had some people on the big screen and on the little screen, and I am telling you know that phrase, herding cats? This is even worse. It was just terrible. So we decided that until conditions were right, and people felt comfortable enough to come out and justify the time here, we will continue to meet on Zoom, which is basically what we're doing now. So Denise made a very good point that I want to elaborate on just a little bit in terms of what is special about WriteOn. And this is something that we worked on together. It kind of grew naturally, but it's something that we glommed onto and decided strategically to kind of focus on, which is we are not one of these groups that comes at you and says, this is what's wrong with your check. This is the worst crap I've ever read. No, we're not that competitive. And I've been to one or two of those groups. It's awful. If you come on in, if you are in any way a creative soul, you know how frightening it can be to expose yourself to others. You know, how many times do you hear, oh, but I'm not really a writer. Shut up. Yes, you are. You're a writer because you've written something. That's it. That's the criteria. But to get to that point even is sometimes terribly frightening. So what we do instead is we always, always, always start by honoring the effort. Honoring the courage that it takes to do this. Then we can get into, then we can start to talk about qualifying and quantifying, because each one of our members has some unique skill set or some different part that they can throw into the conversation. Denise and I are both professional writers. I'm a former journalist and now a communications person. She's a journalist. We've been writing, for a long time. Others, this is a hobby. One of our writers is very good with grammar. We call it the grammar Nazi. That's probably not funny these days, but I tend to listen more kind of for the musicality of things and more about kind of the poetry of this stuff. Denise is fantastic in building structure in her writing and is a master at that. We have another young lady who is a great, great minimalist. She's one of these people, and that makes me nuts. Drives me crazy. What takes me 10 pages to say, she can say in 3 paragraphs, and it's better. But that, so there's different ears and different eyes, and you'll get that kind of feedback, but only after we tell you, yay for you, for trying this, So and we're very proud of it. That's what makes WriteOn kind of special.
We'll get sometimes writers who have been writing for 30 years and has never shared their work with anyone. So he talks about the courage. I mean, at this point it's become very personal to you. You're very attached to your work. It's in your head. And the courage it takes to take this writing and read it to a bunch of strangers, and sometimes there's no one stranger than us, and you're not sure what's going to happen. Will they like it? Will they hate it? Will they find out I'm no good at this? But in addition to the feedback, what's also wonderfully interesting is that you can get conflicting feedback, because there is no one rule in writing. There's no rule. If 10 people tell you maybe something just isn't working in your writing, then it probably isn't. But there's times when I'll say, you should rewrite this, and Tom's like, that is perfect. I wouldn't change it.
And
the other way around.
And the other thing that's interesting is to hear how different people hear and react to what you've written, right? You might have meant A, B, and C when you wrote it. This was the point of your poem, your story. Well, but listen, I heard it, and I heard it through my ears and my heart, and to me it struck this chord, and you heard it differently. And, man, that's fun. I mean, sometimes it's a little unnerving sometimes, because you think, well, God, I meant this, but that's the whole point. That's the magic of reading and writing, is that it's very intimate and personal. And so we enjoy those conversations. Sometimes they can be a little combative, and other times they're very affirming, but that's okay. That's the part that everybody wants to get to eventually, where you can grow from where you started that night to where you're going to come back and to the next meeting. So, good thing.
No,
Good
and
stuff.
you'll also have, I just want to piggyback on that, if you go to the next topic, is, sometimes you think, well, this writing is for everybody. And then you'll read this, and one person is so moved and is sobbing, and the other person's going, ah. And so it really isn't. And when you find where your writing resonates, one is it also encourages you, because you know that some people are really going to enjoy it. But on the other hand, you won't be so worried and afraid if somebody doesn't like it, because not everybody will, and some people will love it. And so I think that gives writers hope too, that if somebody doesn't like something, it doesn't mean there is something wrong with you as a writer or with the piece that you have written.
As you've been talking, a question came to mind. Since you're both professional writers with journalism and communications background, when you go home at the end of the day, where do you find the inspiration to write creatively for your project?
You go, Tom.
Well, in fact, I've said this many times. For me, a lot of times, to be completely honest, it's like a busman's holiday. This is what I do all flipping day long. 6 days a week. I'm the director of community relations for the 5th biggest school district in Illinois. All I do is write and talk and write and talk. So you know what I don't want to do when I go home? Write and talk. But then something will hit. And where does it hit? I mean, in the shower, out taking a walk. I remember I was married 6 years. 6 years ago, my oldest daughter was getting married, and I was writing the dance speech, right? And I just couldn't think of how to end this thing, and it just hit me like a wind coming out of the west. And I called her and I said, "What do you think about this? This is the coolest thing ever." Out of nowhere. I've got a 4-year-old granddaughter who is a constant source of inspiration now, because she just makes me laugh all the time. So anything, really anything. But an even better example sometimes, and we do this with our group, is sometimes just to change it up, right? Just to switch things around and give people a chance to kind of mentally refresh. I'll give you a prompt. Out of nowhere, I got a whole envelope full of just ridiculous things. I saw a girl with red hair come in the room, ... Now, you go and write something that incorporates that. Okay? Sometimes they give you a couple of days, sometimes you got 20 minutes. Go. Right? And then it's amazing to see, it's magic to see what comes out of people. One of the very best things that this group ever has done was a prompt that Denise gave us. Here it is. Y'all ready? A baby cheetah appears on your porch and asks for a sandwich. Well, that sounds pretty stupid. But it filled a book with some of the best writing and funniest stories. And it's just amazing the way different people's minds work. And there was about 20 people who contributed to this. To take that little thing and turn it into something. It's just a lot of fun. So where does inspiration come from? Everywhere. Yeah. Cheetahs. It comes from baby cheetahs.
By the way, that cheetah was from a real safari, not the sandwich that was photoshopped in. But the woman in our group is a professional photographer, and she's beautiful, and she was on the set. That's a real baby cheetah in the wild, with a sandwich. At the end of the day, and that's very true, we both work long hours, but we have also found, this is a terrible mask, it won't stay up. There would be times we would be walking into the meeting or walking the Book and Bean Cafe, and it's like, I can't pack in another word. I don't know how I'm going to do tonight before the WriteOn meeting. And I'm mentally tired. I have been looking at a lot of words, not all day, but all week. I have been writing things, editing things. And a lot of times I do it very fast, too, because of deadlines. It's like, time. It's like, I have 15 minutes to put this together, and it's got to be up. So I'm tired. And we come into WriteOn, and the creativity of other people that we didn't have to create, and listening to that, I leave energized and ready to write. So sometimes just the creativity of writers can feed the creativity. Also, how could you still write creatively because you write all day? It's like, well, I had breakfast today, why would I have lunch? Well, because there's a little space of time and it's a completely different meal. And so the writing that we do professionally is very different from the writing we do creatively. And one kind of feeds the other. When I was in college, I had this poster that a friend had given me. He says, life, the things about that makes life fun is a series of contrasts. So, for instance, you know, it's fun to have a cold where you can stay home and eat, and it's fun to have the flu because then you can stay home and lose weight. And so things like that, you know, nights going out in the town stop being fun if you can't stay home with a book and hot chocolate. So the writing that I would do for the newspaper, you know, very features, creative nonfiction, is very different when I go home and write about crocheted mice and a supernatural super sleuth who is part snake oil and solves mysteries all over the country and is, you know, and vampires. And that's a very different type of writing. And I have a chance to write things that are not on deadline, and I can have time to just think things out, try things, reject things. It doesn't matter. It's not my job. I can take as long as I want, try new writing techniques, and that can feed back into my job because I've given one side of a brain a rest, and I've tried some different writing things. So it sounds like it's the same, but it's really very different. And yet they are connected, and the two feed each other, I think.
To follow up on that, what is your writing process? Does it start at the beginning, the end, somewhere in the middle, with a character, a plot twist? What's your writing process?
Well, I will tell you that for me, most of my writing is essays and poetry. Fiction is kind of a distant third. So when I write essays and my poetry, usually I have to have kind of I have to at least have a vision of where I want to start. If it's a first line, and again, remember, I tend to kind of think musically. So I'm listening as I'm writing, you know. And particularly with poetry, sometimes it'll go in a different direction than even what I thought when I was, you know, thinking it through in my head, and I look at it and go, oh, well, that's not what I really meant, but okay, that's kind of cool too. So I tend to start with the first line, and frankly, when I was a newspaper reporter several lifetimes ago, I was the same way. I could report the story, in other words, gather all the information, but I couldn't write it until I knew where it started. My editor's angry sometimes, but you know, that's my process. I have to have the beginning in mind. The rest of it then just kind of becomes the work of writing.
As a newspaper person, I can understand it because that first opening sentence is the point of the story. And so if I don't have that in my mind, I sometimes will have trouble writing a story for the paper too, but I don't have that time on deadline to kind of like, oh, yeah. So I'll start in the middle. I'll start with a quote, start with here. And I also build my fiction out the same way. Honestly, it starts with an idea, a phrase, a concept I want to explore. It can start with just so many different, I mean, ideas come from different places. But then it will be something that I want to think about for a while. Do I want to write about this? Where would this go? And my reporter instincts will kick in a little bit too, because some people will build these things from the inside.